Everyone. Now let's get straight into our conversation for tonight. Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello will step down on the 27th of January. And so tonight we'll take another look at his 8 years tenure, his challenges, triumphs and achievements, and the task ahead of the governor-elect Alhaji Usman Odudu. Tonight I am joined by the chairman, Nigerian Medical Association Kogi State Chapter, Dr. Olushola Bauku. Good evening, Doctor. It's so great to have you on Politics Tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Right. So it's been
And
8
thank you
years.
so much, viewers.
Great. Good to have you too. It's been 8 years of Governor Yahaya Bello overseeing the state affairs of Kogi State. How do you assess his administration?
Well, thank you so much. For the benefit of being objective and for the viewers to be able to follow the conversation, I believe that we are researchers, and in trying to do our research, we usually come up with variables of assessment. You just make blank statement without measuring the content of your assessment, then it's probably more like it's null and void. So for this conversation, I actually want to lay some foundation. You see, the primary purpose of governance is security and well-being of properties. Now, when you're speaking to economic and national development, you're going to be talking about ability of any government to provide the basic need to its citizen. And the second part, which is very important, the ability to provide enabling environment for them to reach their full potential. That is the part people don't speak to, and I will speak to it this night. So for me, in the last 8 years of His Excellency Alhaji Yahaya Bello, we are doctors, our men are the ones that have been saddled with this responsibility, with the full backing of the governor to carry out and drive the health policy in the state. And I can tell you that Kogi State is on a very good trajectory with regards to our assessment. Now, let me break it down this way. If you want to assess economic and national development, you have to use one, gross domestic product, gross national product per capita. Then the one that it's important to us, Human Development Index. Now, the HDI, you break it down into three. You're talking about the life expectancy as birth. You're talking about death rate, birth rate, maternal mortality rate, maternal mortality ratio. Then you talk about the literacy rate, talking about the school living age, education, and all that. Then you talk about the last one, which is the real GDP per capita, which is the standard of living of every citizen of Kogi State. Then the social progressive index, which they are talking to access to knowledge, access to information, access to health and well-being, and ecosystem sanity. Now, we have to pick these variables to be able to assess the government. Now, if you look at 2016, when this government came into power, followed critically, the IGR as at that time, verifiable, you can't check, is about 6.48 billion. That's annually. Then the fact, federal allocation that comes was about 40.22. In the last meeting the governor had, he made an assessment, which I verified, that the IGR of Kogi has now increased to 1.5 billion monthly. Now, if you are a government that comes into power and you look at the IGR and the FAC ratio, which is your fiscal sustainability, the IGR as at that time, 2016, was about 23% of the fiscal sustainability. Now, the FAC was 77%. Now, in the real sense of it, that means when you cut off the federal allocation to this state, you cannot keep up with this fiscal sustainability, which is what salaries and wages, and of course the pensions and all that. So if you are a serious government, what are you supposed to do? First thing is to increase and extrapolate the IGR. That's the first thing, and that was the first thing this government did. We monitored it. What are you supposed to do? First, block leakages, and that leads to the establishment of the revenue house. Block leakages, then look at the way where tax and revenues can come in. And if you now look at it, from 2016 to 2020, it grew to 23.88 billion. And now we're talking about 1.5 billion every month. So you have succeeded in growing your IGR. What then do you do? The next thing is infrastructure. Provide an enabling environment for people to come in, investors to come in and invest in your state, and of course allow your people to be employed, then the state will flourish. So ultimately, it led to infrastructural development, and that is what I'll talk to now, the first point. If you look at Kogi State, the fact is, we are the most bordered state. We're bordered by 10 extra states. Now, that means we are like a watershed. We're like a waterfall that takes in every inadequacies from all those 10 states. So in the health sector, what do? The first thing you do is establish infrastructure so as to do what? Generate income. When people cannot be, when Enugu, Kwara, they are overburdened in their health, some of their people will move into Kogi State and access the healthcare and pay before they increase the IGR. So what did this government do that we have monitored in the health sector? They started infrastructure. And in the last 2-3 years, you have seen high rising health infrastructure across Kogi State, of course, across the senatorial district. I am a holder of IION, Integrity Icon of Nigeria by CESVO. So what I tell you, you verify. The fact, I start from the first landmark infrastructure. That is the Gegu Modern Hospital. Now, what is fantastic about that hospital, one, is the location. If you look at the location of Gegu, it's on your right side when you're traveling to Abuja Road. The accident that happened on Abuja Lokoja Road, you can now take them to that Gegu ultramodern hospitals. They can be treated there. You can generate revenue. You can reduce death rate. And look at the location of that hospital. They're talking about trauma. You have to be speaking to one, primary survey, secondary survey, tertiary survey. All these, they are factor of time. So when anybody run into any accident or involved in an accident, the hospital is at the center of the town. You just have 30 seconds to drive into the hospital. And that is a very fantastic decision from the government, driven by our own boss, Honorable Zachary Usman, and the former Commissioner for Health with their advice.
Dr. Balko.
Secondly,
we'll get to, talk about all of these critical sectors one by one. But then, apart from the encumbrances and challenges which come naturally with the office of the governor, and you say Yahaya Bello was also determined to make young people proud, especially as someone who made a complete change from the former dominance of elderly people in the saddle of the state's affairs. As a young person, can you say that the governor really made young people proud?
Okay, now, let me tell you this for a fact. I will not be able to speak to any other sector, but I can tell you I have the bragging right to speak to health sector. And of course, I have also a little knowledge of the security, because of course that's the pivotal for which every other sector stands on. If there is no security of lives and properties, no sector can excel. So in the place where I have a bragging right, which is health sector, I will tell you that with the high rising world-class hospitals, facilities. Hospitals are they are managed through 3 categories. 1 is facility, 2 is funding, and 3 is human resource. No singular variable is independent of the other, and the funding is the one that starts from the beginning and become continuous. So the first thing you first need to do is to put the facilities in place. When you put the facilities in place, then you bring in human resource, then funding continues. So for all the things that we have witnessed in health sector, I can tell you that at NMA, I am inspired. And of course, I'm greatly inspired. And our people really that are saddled with those responsibilities and have done fantastically well. Like I remember there is a man, Dr. Adekunle Aledare, is the man in charge of the insurance scheme. He's doing fantastically well. He's a young man. There is another young man in Gebu Beki or to Dr. Idris. They are doing fantastically well. Our professor is the man in charge of Anyigba, Prince Abubakar University Teaching Hospital. These men, Professor Akogu, these men they are young men and they are doing fantastically well. And if you go to the primary healthcare sector, that is being manned by my own boss, Dr. Abubakar, and of course the director of operations, which is Dr. Jonah Kelvin. These are young men that have been saddled with those responsibilities, and they are doing very well. And of course, the top man there, the Commissioner for Health, the immediate past Commissioner for Health, Alhaji Usman Zakari, is also a young man. So if you say young men inspired are proud, I will tell you yes, because these are young men that have excelled where they have been saddled with responsibility and they have done fantastically well. So the governor has invested trust in our doctors, and they have not disappointed him, and we are proud.
So because
very proud.
Because you're a stakeholder in that sector, let's talk some more. I mean, before now, some of the challenges of healthcare delivery in Kogi State ranged from lack of personnel development in the healthcare services, inadequate provision of essential drugs in all the facilities in the state, lack of proper immunization programs, poor treatment of epidemic diseases, poor funding. You talked about that earlier. Lack of qualified personnel, zero motivation of healthcare workers towards service delivery, especially in the rural areas. Also, lack of bonuses and incentive programs for healthcare workers, especially in the rural areas as well. What impact has the governor made in addressing these challenges?
All right. Now, the base for health, the smallest unit is actually the primary health care. That's where all these you have mentioned actually is done effectively. Immunization, family planning, girl education, primary diseases before you, so that you don't overburden the secondary health care. I've just told you that Primary Healthcare Development Agency is under one of our own, is an NMA member, Dr. Abubakar, and the deputy is also our secretary, Dr. Jonah Kelvin. I can tell you now that primary healthcare facilities in Kogi State across all the world, they are now revamped, and they are now being manned with quality qualified midwives. You can go and verify, and I can tell you that every blessed week, there is training and retraining of those traditional birth attendants, matrons that have been doing delivery over the years. They are training and retraining these people. And what is the goal? Maternal mortality reduction. What is the goal? Infant death rate reduction. And this, for instance, I'm on the board of the Kogi State Health Insurance Agency. I can tell you everything that the agency is doing. So all these immunization, education, public enlightenment programs, they are being taken over by the primary health care. And the government has backed these people up and strengthened the primary health care in Kogi State. And now I'm telling you, you can go and verify. Amongst the primary health care in this country, Kogi State is top-notch. We don't have any unqualified personnel running the primary health care. They employed all across the primary health care, midwives, people that are trained and they are qualified. And when you do all that, you set a tone to improve your statistics. Kogi State, as at 2020, sit as the 10th. When you talk about maternal mortality, 312, I suppose, in per 100,000, thereabout. I'm sure it's 312. Now, we are 10th, not that we are 15 or 20 or 30. 10th as at 2020. Now, from 2020 till now, 5 solid infrastructures are arising. Now, roads are being constructed that can transport pregnant women, bleeding patients across facilities. Primary health care places are being strengthened and revamped. There is now donation of ambulance that can transport bleeding cases. Staffs at the primary health care are being trained to know how to identify severe cases. Do you understand? Post-abortal sepsis, hemorrhage, all those causes of maternal mortality, toxemia of pregnancy. So when you have all these being identified, recognized, and immediately referred, and you don't only refer, you now have the facility to transport them, which are the ambulances. Then in the next 5 years, when the study is done, you can be sure Kogi State will not remain number 10. We will have moved higher. I'm convinced we will have moved higher.
Right. So I would like you to also talk to us about the world-class reference hospital in Ekene and the significance of that project to you professionals.
Okay. Let me tell you something. Today, I was reading an article written by a Sierra Leonean who is a British citizen, but Sierra Leonean descent. And she was full of praise for Nigerian doctors. I was also reading another article where somebody was boasting his chest that in Lagos right now, people should start building houses and they should start buying properties. Do you know why? They said patients are now coming from abroad to do surgeries in Nigeria. That means they are flowing in from abroad to do their surgeries in Lagos, Abuja. Where is the closest place to Abuja? Of course, Lokoja. So now, if you are a serious government, what do? And you are a visionary. You try to take advantage of medical tourism. And how do you do that? You put in place world-class equipment. Now, I was in reference hospital, Kenny. I can speak because I was there, and I was all in all the rooms. And let me tell you what I saw. What I saw in that reference hospital, one is where I worked, the theater where I worked. Every equipment that was in that theater had a backup that was brand new. The suction that you are using, there is another backup suction in that theater that was brand new. The oxygen concentrator that was there is another oxygen concentrator that was brand new. Let's not talk about alpha lutein. I'm talking about little things that can mess you up as a doctor. Now, blood warmers, wall temperatures, you have brand new. In case one messes up, then you can pick up another one. Now, we had the greatest transition to exchange of interoperatively that I've ever mentioned, that I've ever seen. We had successive operation done with no little or no delay. And surprisingly and shockingly, all through this surgery, there was no light out. There was no light out. Now, I don't want to go highfalutin now. I'm talking basis. Very many Nigerians are living below a particular dollar. So now, what do we need? We need surgeries like typhoid path operations. We need surgeries like hernia. We need surgeries like appendicitis and all that. Once you have a standard theater that can attend to all these cases, you have cut down mortality, death rate in the state. You have successfully. Now, let me go a bit higher. In that same reference hospital, you have a magnetic resonance imaging facility. And I tried to read about that MRI. And I can tell you that MRI, as at the time of acquisition, was the year it was produced. You can verify. It's a GE manufactured, 70 centimeters to feet, wide bore, open, 1.5 Tesla MRI. Go and read about it. And fascinating thing about that MRI is this. You consume lesser helium. Once you have an energy to operate your MRI, you can take as many patients as possible. So if your MRI runs 13 hours, that MRI that is seated in that reference hospital consumes 70% lesser than every other MRI in this country. You can verify what I'm telling you. That's one. Two, only one Tesla, just one Tesla, is 30,000 times greater than the gravitational force. That of the Earth. You have a 1.5 Tesla. That's to tell you that you have improved resolution. You have faster patient attendance. That's what you have in that hospital that is seated right there. And that was bought. And I saw it and I read about it and I was impressed. Another thing that we have there is 128 slice CT scan. And you see, we were coming from a place where if you need to run a CT scan for a patient in Federal Teaching Hospital or anywhere in Kogi State, you have to tell them to either go to Abuja or they go to Ilorin. Now look at the roads in the country and look at the patient head injury. When you're managing an injured patient, you need to go from presentation to CT scan room direct to the theater. Once you discover what is wrong, then you move to ICU. But in Kogi State, you first have to move them to Abuja, then you move them back. So what was happening? We're losing patients on the road. So we decided, okay, just be staying back there. What are you doing? You're losing revenue. So if a government has not thought it twice to put the CT scan and MRI in place, one, you have reduced the death rate in the state. Two, you have reversed the medical tourism. Three, you have improved your internet generated revenue. Four, you have employed your people.
Dr. Balku,
does this also to be exposed to learning?
Dr. Balku, does this also include accurately investigating and treating renal and coronary disorders?
Okay, I was talking about that Gegubeki Hospital. One of the complications when the patient has trauma is hemorrhage bleeding. And of course, when you don't measure up to the laws, patient can easily go into AKI and all that. I can tell you categorically because Dr. Idris is our SEC member. They have a dialysis machine inside that Gegubeki. That's just Gegubeki. In Prince Abubakar University Teaching Hospital, have a facility for dialysis. In reference hospital, they have a facility for dialysis. So you can manage renal cases correctly. And we have sophisticated, well-trained nephrologists in town. Dr. Adewale Abolore is one of our foremost nephrologists that is in the state. So once you have facilities to work with, you cut down on your problems. The problem of some states is because you have constellation of highly trained doctors. that are well trained and they continue to train themselves. They don't have what to work with. Now, you can dialyze a patient right in Gegubeki Hospital if you go into acute kidney injury. Another fascinating thing is you have a facility for fat scan. When patient comes in trauma, you can check all the spaces, pelvic, perineum, pericardial traces. You can immediately diagnose any internal bleeding. Then, of course, you intervene. So those are the things that have been put in place in those hospitals, and they are going to tremendously trajectorily increase the survival rate of any patient in this state. Give it 5, 10 years, and you can quote me for it. So if we keep up with funding, we keep up with human resource management, we continue to train and retrain our staffs, we continue, of course, to repair if there are damages and we don't abandon, then this state will not remain the same in the next 5 years. And that's what vision is all about. You see the future from now, and you're able to convert your aspiration into reality. And that's what is in Kogi State. So now we have a personal physician to the governor who has a knowledge of hyperbaric medicine. And you now have seated the reference hospital Okede an hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Let me tell you what that chamber does. I've learned about it all my years in anesthesia. I've never seen it. Kogi State is the first place I'll see it, and that reference hospital was where I saw it. Now, you can manage your sepsis patient conveniently in an hyperbaric oxygen chamber. The moment you can deliver oxygen at a higher pressure, you can manage sepsis well, you increase the chances of survival, then you can manage poisoning, osteomyelitis, gas gangrene. Those cases can be managed in the state. And what have you done? You've stopped medical tourism. People do not need to now be transported from here, intubated to Abuja because you cannot give them the best. But now, the Kogi State government, of course, has now put all this in place. With time, they are going to be fully established and fully functional because nobody will abandon all those equipment. I believe so, nobody will. Oh. So now we can now see all these things that we have read in the books, we can now practice them. So for me, that the executive governor of Kogi State has trusted our men who are members of NMA, and they have advised him, and he has given them his backing, he has given them his trust, and he has provided all this in the state. I'm proud, first, of our members that are in the state employee as advisory, then I'm very proud of the governor.
All right. Dr. Balko, let's take a... Welcome back, everyone. You're still watching Politics Tonight, and tonight's conversation is centered on Governor Yahaya Bello's stewardship and the task ahead of the next governor of Kogi State. And I've been speaking with Dr. Olushola Balko, chairman of the Nigerian Medical Association Kogi State chapter. Dr. Balko, thank you for staying with us. Now, I'm asking you some of these questions because I believe your association is a direct beneficiary of some of these reforms, especially in the health sector. And it's important to know how impactful these reforms are. So, quickly talk to us about the significance and impact, the approval of the 100% hazard allowance for medical doctors and other health workers, allocation of 25 ambulances to all local governments in the states is having on the people and you professionals. How has this step enhanced the health sector? And also recently, the governor released millions of naira to settle all outstanding school fees of medical students on scholarship. Talk to us about that.
All right, you see, NMA exists majorly for the welfare of our members. So anywhere the welfare of our members is taken into cognizance and consideration, you'll find NMA there. Now, when salaries or allowances are increased at the federal level, across all the 36 states, you have to start to agitate locally so that, of course, either they pay you percentage or they pay you everything in line with what the federal people are getting. Now, the first thing that came to federal was commerce grading. That was 2014. I can tell you for a fact that Kogi State is paying commerce 2014 full. Now, we move to commerce 2019, which is a review of commerce. NMA Kogi State have come with a template. As at the time we're submitting all our agitations, before we knew it, hazard allowance came. Before we knew it, medical residency training, funding, and acts came. So we submitted all this to the state government. And you see, I believe something about leaders. There are three things I use to evaluate leaders. 1, to listen. 2, to be ready. And 3, to take action. We wrote an official letter to His Excellency that we want to have a meeting with him. He granted us the audience. We met with him. We chronicled all these allowances to His Excellency. Without missing, we had to let him know that for us to reverse brain drain, for us to attract more doctors, for us to keep the ones we have, and for us to be able to sustain the health sector in Kogi State, the welfare of the Kogi doctors must be paramount. Now, of all this demand, fast forward to, we met him in August. Fast forward to today that I'm talking to you. We have now 100% hazard allowance approved. And of course, with immediate effect funding. That means in the space of 3 weeks, Kogi State moved from 0% hazard allowance to 50%, then to 100%. 2, we had agitation about Medical Residency Training Act. We wanted to domesticate it. We moved to our Commissioner for Health and we discussed with him. Dr. Ame is the president of KSSH Specialist Hospital. He is also a trainee in that specialist hospital. They are paying huge amount of money to be able to train themselves, of course, to be consultants. So there is need for the government to look into training and retraining of doctors in line with the Medical Residency Training Act. We proposed this to the commissioner. He promised us he was going to take it to the governor. It was taken to the governor. At the meeting with the governor, we further substantiated the claim that our men in the state employee should have access to be able to be trained. And how do you do that? Domesticate MRT, Medical Residency Training Act. And for the ones that are already doing training, Dr. Ahmed, Dr. Kuye, Dr. I think Chima or Chidi, all in KSSA, we need them to be paid so that they can pay and finish. As I'm talking to you like this, it has been approved. What we're waiting for is funding. And of course, we're speaking to the Auditor General of the state to know where the approval letter has gotten to so that we can start getting the funds. So 100% hazard allowance. And I made bold to say, people might not like it, but I speak the truth because one thing is, we must, as a nation, begin to commend where commendation is necessary, then criticize where things are not being done, then condemn where bad things are done. Earlier today, I condemned an act openly with that remorse. I still condemn it, and I will condemn it anywhere. But when somebody has done something, then you must speak the truth and commend the person. Now, we have now moved about 7 or 8 states of all the 36 states. I can now boastfully tell my colleagues that we have 100% hazard allowance, 100%. Out of the 36 states, only four that I know have domesticated the MRTA. Benue State that we use as our point of contact to the government. And now Kogi State now have MRTA domesticated in Kogi State. So if you are in Olamaboro, for instance, and you decide that you want to do obstetric and gynecology residency, all you need to is to write to the DMST of the HMB, or of course the what's it called, the ministry commissioner, that I want to proceed on the training by accessing the MRTA. If the rapport is good and all, then they will sign you up and fund you. So that is the basis we are right now. And we must salute that where we have gotten to from ground zero. We must appreciate the fact that we have left where we used to be, where we are right now. And before, who was talking about MRTF in Kogi State? Who was talking about hazard allowance? But in space of 3 weeks, we spoke to 50% and we spoke to 100%.
All right. Thank you for going, Dr. Balko, thank you for going there, because I was supposed to take you up on manpower, training and remuneration, but you already touched on that. So, I mean, huge capital projects across the states, but of course, you cannot forget the challenge of Nigerians, which is bad attitude towards government facilities. How do you charge the outgoing government and the incoming government on ensuring proper maintenance of these projects?
Well, first is to let the government be aware that maintenance culture is what keeps everything in touch all year round or all years round. If we lack the maintenance culture, then everything gets destroyed. Now, the government has organogram. You have the CMDs of hospital, then the CMAC or the ACS as it may be, then the heads of admin, who takes inventories of all these facilities that are under the care of the head of unit. So if there are constant check on your inventory, then there are punitive measures for people that mismanage all this equipment, then there are prompt repair. Then you're good to go. But all these are going to, they're going to come through the ranks of hospital management. They're going to come through the ranks of hospital management. For instance, in FTHL, where I work, General Muhammadu Buhari, when he was president, doesn't come to the theater to make sure our oxygen monitor is working. But of course, the CMD of the hospital does. So that is another level of engagement of the people that are saddled with that responsibility. And I can tell you free, like I've told you here right now, that our men in charge of all these facilities, primary health care agency, health insurance agency, epidemiology, malaria prevention and control, inspectorate team, all these young men are doing fantastically well and they are getting awards and they are being recognized. And so they don't need anybody to tell them that we need to do well because it is our profession and our integrity matters. And I can tell you I'm in constant discussion with these men and they are making us proud. And like I told you, Kogi State is now on a trajectory to take over at least first or second position in this country. With time, in a very short time, I'll tell you that. If we, like I told you, do we have challenges? Yes, we do. Now, do I have access to the governor? Yes, I do. If I chat him, does he respond? Yes, he does. So I don't need to come here to tell you all our challenges because why? I'm a Yoruba man. We are trained differently. If my dad has given me school fees, if he's not to buy my book, I would not come and tell you on national TV. But I can tell you we have challenges and we have drawn up a model. And the model is simple. Rural allowance for our colleagues in the rural areas, car and housing allowances, review of comments. We've already drawn the table.
All right, Dr. Balku.
We're going to submit to the government.
All right. Fantastic. I mean, in the last 40 minutes, we've talked about infrastructure, we've talked about health, we've talked about education. Let's talk about flooding. I mean, you would agree with me that Kogi State is among those states usually devastated by flooding. And looking at some of the reports recently or in the last few years, residents of Kogi State are usually at risk of losing lives and property due to inadequate mitigation strategies despite early warnings. How has the governor fared in addressing this?
Now, first, let me give you my personal experience with the governor. Personal. As NMA chairman of Kogi State, I had the very opportunity of being close to him during the flood time. Being close to him, and when he came down for on-the-spot assessment, I was directly behind him. The pictures are there. I could send you the pictures if you want to verify. Before he came, the Honorable Commissioner for Health, the immediate past Commissioner for Health, Alhaji Usman Zakari, my own boss, we've had several meetings with the World Health Organization, with the epidemiology in the Ministry of Health. We've had several meetings. We've assessed the flood in shortest possible time. The World Health Organization, they were there. We've assessed this. We developed policy on how to go about it. We have already established camps. And NMA Kogi State has the full data of displaced people because we were all on ground taking their name. It wasn't that they were ghosts. We took their names. I have the document. So my personal experience with him, when he came down from Abuja for on-the-spot assessment, we were in a place, they call it Pata Market, correctly. He was in the front, I was at the back. So they were trying to show him the flooded areas, every flood across that market. Do you know what the governor said? He said they should bring a canoe that he will go there and see by himself. I was behind him. I don't need to lie. I will say my mind. They brought a canoe. I have the picture. The governor entered the canoe and he was going right there to those Kabawa areas on the water to see. As NMA chairman, you don't have a choice. When your governor is already in the canoe and is that passionate about his people, myself, Dr. Barry, and some other guys, we had to jump into canoe with him. And we followed him and came back. And I was surprised that he had the time to do that assessment. And when we moved from there, I'm telling you true life story. We moved to the IDP camps and we saw all those people. And he was there. And I was there as well. And do you know what he leaned to ask the DG protocol? He leaned to ask them, what are they eating? Are they eating? That was what he asked. Then he left. And after he left, we saw the relief materials and everything all over the place. We had the statistics of the displaced people. The Honorable Commissioner for Health, we all have statistics. Until they were returned back to their various houses, none of them suffered.
All right.
None of them suffered. We even established clinics at all the IDP camps, and our doctors were going there to consult.
All right, Dr.
And
Balko.
we have footages and videos of all this.
All right, we have a few minutes left, and we still have, some other issues to cover. Let's quickly talk about his successor. That's the governor-elect, Ahmed Usman Ododo, who has also shared his plans to further improve healthcare across all economic sectors, with a particular focus on healthcare delivery. What more would you want him to focus on?
All right. Some days ago, we had medical students who were transferred out of Prince Abubakar University because their dream was suddenly brought to a halt because there was no accreditation. I had a similar occurrence while I was in my university, where I had to spend 11 years in school without having to repeat. But the governor then did not have that dream to ship us out and pay us. So they were transferred to other universities to finish on full scholarship, and they came to appreciate the governor. And right there and then, we started discussing on one thing. How do we keep these young men employed in Kogi State? And that is where I want to take this discussion from. Now we have spoken facilities and infrastructures all over the place, verifiable. Now, we need to now speak to welfare of doctors to keep the ones we have, to attract the ones outside, and to now make those young men, new doctors that will be graduating very soon, to be employed in the state and love to be employed. And that is why I will implore the governor-elect, Alhaji Usman Ododo, to, after the swearing in, immediately sit down with us. Because there is a state of emergency to grow such shortage of doctors across the country in this nation. And Kogi State can quickly harvest these doctors out there if we get our things right. And what do we need to do? One, we need to first look into the remuneration of doctors. Review of commerce. We pay. Then we look at our doctors in the rural areas. I have traveled all the 21 local governments of Kogi State. I have seen all our doctors face to face. These people are giving their life out to safeguard the Kogi State health sector in respect for the governor, His Excellency Alhaji Yahaya Bello. Every blessed day they are their duty post doing their best. That is out of regard for the governor to make sure the governor does not fail. And that is why, of all the sectors, make bold to say the health sector in Kogi State is the best sector. And it is the sector that has gotten the greatest investment with Alhaji Yahaya Bello. Now, to continue in that trajectory, these men in those rural areas, we need to give them incentives. And what is that? Rural allowances. Let's bring back rural allowance for these doctors so that they can conveniently be staying where they are. What else can we do? We're doing good roads to them. Let's give them car loans. Let's give them housing loans. The kids are already now benefiting from the bill that was just signed by His Excellency Alhaji Yahaya Bello. Their exams can now be paid freely. Fine. So let's give them car loans. Let's give them housing loans. We increase their loyalty and patriotism to Kogi State. So they stay. Other people will hear of it from outside. They will come. And what are we going to finally achieve? All the 10 states that borders Kogi State. If we poke their doctors and we poke them into Kogi State, we as well poke their patients. So we increase the IGR of the state and we improve the generality of the sustainability of the state.
So
So in
talking
other
about
words,
IGR, Dr. Bauko, quickly, in less than 1 minute, talking about IGR, what are those or what are the untapped sectors in Kogi State that you would advise the incoming governor to focus on in order to generate more revenue for the state? Dr. Bauko, are you there?
hello?
Are you there? So my final question,
Yeah, I'm here now.
yes, in less than 1
Yes.
minute, what are the untapped sectors in Kogi State that you would advise the incoming governor to focus on in order to generate more revenue for the state?
Okay, give me 30 seconds to speak to certain things. Give me 30 seconds to speak
Please
to
go
the
ahead in 30 seconds, please.
insurance scheme in Kogi State, which is a very fantastic scheme where the governor has leveraged on achieving universal health care, which is accessing health care at little or no funds. I can categorically tell you that that insurance agency is succeeding under Dr. Aledari as the executive secretary. Now they have 112,000 enrollees. They have done over 500 surgeries at no cost to patients in the last 2 years. They now are tapping into the what? The formal sector. And these are the great works of the governor that must be spoken to the world. So if you are a worker in this state right now, we are trying to achieve universal health care for you. And you don't have a problem. All you need to do is pay some, the government will pay the rest, then you can access health care. And I can tell you, I know of a patient that had CS done free of charge, but in the last recording, they had 500 surgeries at no cost to patients. That's a fantastic dream of His Excellency Alhaji Yahaya that we must speak out to, so that this work can continue, the scheme can continue when the governor-elect, Alhaji Usman Ododo, comes in. We must speak to them for continuity. Another thing we must speak to for continuity, which will be my final one, is the fact that over the last few years, there has been, I told you, fact, Kogi State is bordered by 10 states. Fact, Kogi State is the third most populous state. Fact, of I think 24th, about 24th. Now, fact, we are like a waterfall from any insecurity from every other state. So it's a fact that Kogi State is highly prone to insecurity. But look at what has happened in the last 3 years. In 2021, a group of people called them Nigerians in diaspora. They came and gave a governor an award. They called the award a icon on security. In September 21, there was an article by Nafisa Bello on the effort of the Alhaji Yahaya Bello on security. Going back to October that year, the governor received a presidential award. That's the highest honor in this state on security.
All right.
Now, a state that border Kogi State, FCT, came and gave him an award. They say touch area of security. Now, why do I speak to this? Because there need to be
Dr. Bauko,
continuity.
sadly we're out of time.
So I'm
Sadly,
charging
Dr.
Alhaji
Bauko,
Usman Ododo to please continue on the trajectory of the health sector, the welfare of doctors, the infrastructure.
Well said.
The
Thank you so much. We're out of time, Dr. Bauko. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Sadly, we're out of time.